You know this feeling, don't you? That familiar weight on your shoulders, the subtle exhaustion that sets in at the end of a day when you, once again, were everything to everyone but yourself. That internal voice, an incessant echo of the shoulds and needs they taught you. Be a good girl, be understanding, be the peacemaker, the caregiver, the one who never bothers, the one who always, always pleases. You strive, day after day, to fit into molds that were not made by you nor for you. An invisible script passed down from generation to generation that dictates your steps, your choices, even your most intimate desires. And in the silence of the night, when the masks fall, what remains? An uncomfortable emptiness, a persistent confusion, the distressing sensation that something vital, something essentially yours, is being systematically suffocated, silenced. Your true voice, the one that longs for authenticity, can barely whisper amidst the noise of others' expectations. But what if I told you that this good girl, this social construct they taught you to be as a passport to acceptance, needs to die? Not a literal death, but the death of an illusion. And what if philosophy, this ancestral tool of questioning and self-knowledge, held the keys not only to understand this prison, but to break down its doors and awaken a primordial force, an authenticity you may not even know you possess, a revolutionary truth about who you are and who you can become? Simone de Beauvoir, one of the sharpest and most courageous philosophical minds of the 20th century, dedicated her monumental work, The Second Sex, to unraveling the complex and often invisible shackles imposed on women throughout history. She used no euphemisms, she didn't sugarcoat the pill. Beauvoir dissected with surgical precision how woman was historically constituted not as an autonomous being, a full subject of her own existence, but as the other. The object in relation to the male subject, the deviation in relation to the norm. Not the protagonist, but the eternal supporting actress in someone else's life play. And the good girl? The good girl is the most well-finished and socially applauded embodiment of this otherness. She is the product of subtle training, a masterpiece of conformity. She doesn't act on her own impulse, she reacts to expectations. She doesn't define herself, she is defined by the gaze of the other, by the approval or disapproval she receives. Her value, she learns from an early age, seems to reside in how well she plays the roles assigned to her: obedient daughter, complacent wife, selfless mother, and not in how authentically she expresses her uniqueness. Beauvoir identified this state of existential confinement as immanence. Think of immanence as a walled garden, safe, perhaps predictable, but fundamentally limited. It is a state of being absorbed by the immediate, by the repetitive, by the biological and social functions that fix you, that prevent you from launching yourself towards a future built by your own hands. It is being in itself like an object. The visceral and liberating opposite, transcendence. It is the human and therefore feminine capacity to go beyond the given, to project oneself into the world through actions, choices, to create one's own values and meanings. The good girl is the queen of immanence, chained to her role. But the woman who awakens, the woman philosophy calls to life, desperately yearns for transcendence, for the right to be the architect of her own destiny. And what are the real, palpable consequences of living imprisoned in the good girl archetype? They are the dreams shelved, gathering dust from a lack of courage to claim them as your own. They are the silenced opinions, the ideas that die before seeing the light of day, exchanged for the false security of acceptance. They are the no's that get stuck in your throat, turning into resentment and self-annulment. They are the lost opportunities, not for lack of ability, but for an internalized sense of unworthiness or the paralyzing fear of displeasing, of being seen as too ambitious, selfish, bossy, all those labels used to clip the wings of women who dare to want more than the script allows. You become an echo, not a voice, a reflection, not your own light. You learn to navigate the world with a hypersensitive radar to the needs and expectations of others, while your own internal command center becomes progressively abandoned. It's a vicious and painful cycle of self-sabotage, often disguised under the cloak of virtue, generosity, of being an easy person to deal with. But easy for whom? Usually for everyone but yourself. The good girl transforms, as Beauvoir would warn us, into a kind of psychological marionette of the desires, fears, and expectations of society and those around her. She dances to the music they play for her, often without questioning the conductor or the melody. The cage may be golden, adorned with praise for her sweetness, her selflessness, her patience. It might offer a type of comfort, the security of the known, of the approved. But a cage, however beautiful, remains a prison. It limits flight, atrophies the muscles of the soul, restricts the view of the vast horizon of possibilities that exists beyond the bars. You are not perceived in your complex and contradictory totality. You are managed, fitted into convenient categories. The good girl is like a plant carefully pruned to fit into a small pot, when her nature is that of a leafy tree, destined to seek the sun and spread her roots deep into the earth. And beneath the polished and pleasant surface of the good girl, what really simmers in the cauldron of the soul? Often an undercurrent of chronic frustration, a diffuse resentment, almost imperceptible at first, but which grows each time you diminish yourself to fit in. The sharp, piercing pain of not being truly seen, heard, or understood in your essence. A growing sense of invisibility, as if you were a ghost in your own life, playing a role that consumes you, exhausts you, to the point where you barely remember who you were before you learned to perform so well. There is also the constant anxiety of not measuring up, the fear of failing in this role of unattainable perfection. And, perhaps most tragic, a deep hunger for meaning, for purpose, that the constant search for external approval will never be able to satisfy. And here lies one of the cruelest and most painful ironies of this whole dynamic, a paradox that Beauvoir would certainly point out. The very incessant attempt to secure love, acceptance, and belonging through the performance of the good girl is what, in the end, alienates you from true human connection. Because genuine connections, those that nourish the soul and withstand time, do not flourish in the soil of subservience or self-annulment. They are born from the authentic encounter between two whole individuals, with their lights and shadows, their strengths and vulnerabilities. By presenting to the world only a carefully edited facade of herself, the good girl prevents anyone from knowing and loving her for who she truly is. The love you gain by being a character is love for the character, not for you. And when the character inevitably tires or fails, what is left? Simone de Beauvoir, like every existentialist philosopher, confronts us with a truth that may be uncomfortable but is fundamentally empowering. On some level, we consent to the roles that imprison us. We are not mere passive victims of social circumstances or others' expectations. Even if unconsciously, even if out of fear or a desperate desire to belong, we actively participate in the perpetuation of this good girl persona. Society may have built the cage and given us the instruction manual to be good prisoners, but in many moments, it is we who refuse to see that the door is, in fact, unlocked, or that the key to open it lies in our own consciousness and courage. Beauvoir would speak here of bad faith, the self-deception we commit when we deny our fundamental freedom and choose to see ourselves as determined objects rather than free subjects responsible for our choices. The good girl is, in many respects, a continuous exercise in bad faith. So I ask you, and I ask you to be brutally honest with yourself, do you fear the momentary loneliness that can come from authenticity more than the slow daily death of your soul by living a lie? Do you fear the superficial judgment of people who may not even genuinely care about you more than the betrayal of your own deepest values and dreams? It's time to drag these limiting beliefs into the light of day, to dissect these fears that keep you chained to the comfort zone, which often is only comfortable in name. You need to question the narratives you've internalized, those that tell you your voice isn't important, that your desires are secondary, that your strength is a threat. Because the fundamental problem does not lie only in what the outside world expects or demands of you. It lies, crucially, in how much you have allowed these external expectations to infiltrate and become your internal truths. What you've learned to call being a good person or doing the right thing may actually be a veiled refusal, a deep fear of carrying the glorious and, yes, sometimes frightening weight of your own freedom, your own individual and non-transferable soul. It's a deviation from the internal call to become who you truly are. So, how do we perform this inner alchemy? How do we ritually kill the good girl so that the real woman, the whole woman, can finally emerge and breathe? Simone de Beauvoir and the existentialist tradition from which she draws offers us the luminous and challenging path of transcendence. It is not a magic formula, but an existential stance. It is the continuous and conscious journey of reclaiming your subjectivity, of asserting yourself as the author and protagonist of your own narrative, and no longer a mere secondary character in the story of others. It is the radical choice for authenticity, even when conformity seems easier or safer. It is understanding that your existence precedes your essence. You are not born a good girl, you become one, and therefore you can unbecome and rebecome. It's about engaging in projects that are yours, that express your values and passions, that launch you into the future. Whether it's learning a new skill, changing careers, dedicating yourself to a cause, writing a book, or simply cultivating more honest relationships, these are all ways of exercising your transcendence. But let no one deceive you. This path of liberation and self-transformation is not a walk in the park. Breaking with a lifetime of conditioning, unlearning the reflexes of the good girl is hard, often brutal work. There will be resistance, and it will come from all sides. It will come from the outside, from those who benefited from your subservience, who feel uncomfortable with your new strength. And it will come, perhaps even more insidiously, from within yourself, from your own internalized good girl, who will scream in fear, who will try to pull you back to the safety of the old cage. It can be lonely, terribly lonely at times. When you start to draw your own boundaries, to say no firmly, to express your opinions without apologizing, some people may pull away. But it is fundamentally the journey to reclaim who you were born to be, before the world, with its narrow expectations and definitions, told you who you should be. It is a process of peeling back layers, like an archaeologist of your own soul, in search of your most primordial truth. Imagine yourself, for a moment, truly free from the invisible chains of others' expectations. A woman who not only speaks her truth, but embodies it in every cell of her being, even if her voice still trembles in the first attempts. A woman who defines her own terms of success, of happiness, of relationships. Who no longer frantically seeks external validation like a beggar for crumbs, because she has learned to ignite and nurture her own inner fire of self-esteem and self-acceptance. You don't become a selfish shrew, as the good girl's fear might whisper to you. On the contrary, you become real, rooted, reliable, capable of infinitely deeper and more meaningful connections, because now you offer yourself to the world whole, with your light and your shadows, and not just with the permitted and approved fragments. You discover a strength that is not about dominating others, but about mastering yourself. A freedom that is not about doing whatever you want without consequences, but about consciously choosing who you want to be and how you want to live, bearing the responsibility of those choices. You become, in Beauvoir's words, a being for itself, not just in itself. When the good girl dies and the authentic woman takes command of her existence, the landscape of your relationships transforms radically. You stop being a magnet for those who seek an object to mold, a mirror for their own needs, or an emotional servant. Instead, you begin to attract and cultivate connections with people who admire your strength, who respect your individuality, who celebrate your truth, even when it is challenging. Relationships cease to be based on dependence, neediness, or subtle power games, and become founded on freedom, mutual choice, and the genuine desire to walk side by side as whole beings who choose and enrich each other. Love and friendship become an encounter of sovereignties, not a negotiation of deficiencies. And you discover that it is infinitely more gratifying to be loved for who you are than to be tolerated for who you pretend to be. The good girl, this mirage of perfection and subservience, is a comfortable illusion for some, but ultimately a prison that prevents the flourishing of your true essence. Simone de Beauvoir, with her relentless lucidity and profound humanism, bequeathed us a timeless challenge. Dare to be more. Dare to transcend the definitions that belittle you. Dare to reclaim your freedom and your responsibility as a co-creator of your reality. True liberation, true feminine strength, is not a gift received, but a right conquered, a daily practice of courage and self-awareness. It begins the moment you decide, irrevocably, that your life is yours to create, to signify, to live on your own terms, and not a predefined role to be merely performed. Many, unfortunately, will choose the apparent comfort of the old cage, the familiar path of the good girl, for fear of the unknown, for fear of judgment, or simply because unlearning is harder than continuing on autopilot. Make no mistake, the journey of authenticity, of the death of the good girl for the birth of the whole woman, demands visceral courage and unwavering perseverance. But I ask you, and I want this question to echo in the core of your being, what kind of life do you truly yearn to live? A life of pale echoes, of half-sung songs, of unrealized potential? Or a life where your own voice resonates clear and strong, in harmony with your deepest truth, with your untamable soul? The choice, as always in existential philosophy, is radically, frighteningly, wonderfully yours. No one can make this journey for you, but know that you are not alone. Others have walked this path, and others will walk it after you. If this deep and, we hope, transformative message resonated somewhere within you, if the small flame of your true strength and authenticity has begun to rekindle, then I invite you to do 3 simple but powerful things. Like this video so we know this conversation is important. Share it with the women in your life, your friends, sisters, mothers, daughters, because the liberation of one is a step towards the liberation of all. And subscribe to our channel so we can continue exploring together the paths of philosophy and self-knowledge. Your support is not just a number to us, it is a beacon. It is a sign that more women are ready to say goodbye to the good girl and hello to the magnificent and untamable strength that resides within them, waiting patiently to be finally liberated and lived in its fullness. Thank you for watching and for daring to question.